Hey, this is Jared Kraus, host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast, and this is episode number 10. And I had again Mr. Charlie Valher from Outsourcing Angels, who is a business boss. And if you guys have heard any of my episodes, you know who he is. He's a weapon. Now, in this episode, we talk about website brokers versus marketplaces and dive deep into why it's better to buy from one versus the other, depending on where you're at in your journey when you come to buying websites. So if you guys are going to go away and look at buying websites and start making passive income online, this is certainly an episode you don't want to miss. Hey guys, and welcome to the podcast. And today I'm talking with Mr. Charlie Valher from Outsourcing Angels, which if you have listened to any of my episodes of the podcast, you know he needs no introduction at all. Is a boss at business. And we're talking about a really cool topic today, which is website brokers versus marketplaces. And I've had a few people come to me wanting to buy websites and wanting me to do the whole sort of thing, Charlie, do their due diligence and make sure it's a good investment just because they don't want to do it themselves. Now, I know that you've got some stories as well that I would love to hear. And shall we just jump into story time straight away?
Sit down, kiddies. It's my time. Nestle up around the campfire as old Papa Bear lays it down. No, I'm just joking, of course. Jared, very important topic. I'm kind of, I feel like I'm excited all the time, but this topic particular is just really, really fascinating to me. Do you find it fascinating?
I love it, and I talk about it a lot, and that's why I wanted to make an episode dedicated to this because of some of the things that people don't really understand what I'm trying to say when they hear snippets of things from me, and I really want to get everybody to have the whole picture. So, yeah, let's start with let's Papa Charlie's going to jump in and give us some wisdom around the campfire. Or just a story time, Charlie. Like, what's one thing that you have sort of picked up on, or something that you know of where people have bought a business from a broker or a marketplace like that, and it's either turned out really well or hasn't turned out so well?
Where to start? No, I've got some good ones here and some interesting insights. Now, I mean, website brokers and marketplaces, this isn't unique just to the online world. Like, obviously, there are like business brokers out in the world as well, which I've had a little bit of experiences in. And then the other side of things is there's also like marketplaces for businesses. So believe it or not, is once upon a time in the classifieds of like newspapers when I was about 18 to 20, is people used to literally like have classifieds, business sales and things like that in there as well. So this is nothing new. There's obviously these two areas and there's like pros and cons with both of them straight out of the bat. But what I'll dig into is some particularly interesting experiences that I've had, or one particular one. So I read a book called Billionaire in Training by Brad Sugars, which is a fantastic book. I highly recommend that book. And one of the things Brad recommends is in that book is buying a business. He, says something that I know you're a big fan of, Jared, is that, your chances of starting a successful business from scratch are pretty low. You can make a massive shortcut in buying a business from someone else who's already gone through a lot of the testing, so to speak. So I went down this route and I'm like, all right, I'm going to buy a yoga studio, which I've mentioned in previous episodes of the podcast. And I rang up a heap of brokers and said, look, this is what I'm looking for. Got a whole bunch of different books and things like that from yoga studios, signed a heap of NDAs and all that, and began looking for my future business. Now, at this point, I kind of quickly realized, and this is a really hot tip if you're after a certain niche of business, is get a whole heap of the books of different ones, because you'll quickly have a comparison point. So I had the books for 10 yoga studios and all their different prospectus and all that of what the business is. And I was just blown away by how different, for all of them that have a similar business, it was just crazy how different they were. And what I learned in this experience was absolutely crazy. And this is the one thing I would kind of look at is I made a big mistake in thinking that a broker or a website broker or a business broker, whatever you want to call them, is somehow like some sort of business advisor. It's kind of like making the mistake of thinking that a person who sells cars is a car expert. They're probably not. And the advice and things I was given by some particular brokers was like horrifying. So the first thing I'll say is like, just because you use a broker and someone seems like a professional, that doesn't mean you can get rid of all responsibility or due diligence.
Now you have to tell us, Charlie. Come on, you got to tell us what some of these things that were said.
Well, so one of the studios which I really liked wanted $100,000 for the business. And it came with a lease, like no assets, some equipment and things like that. But there's not very much equipment in a yoga studio, to be honest. And I looked at the books and basically the place wasn't making any money. Like, so when I looked at it, it's like I'm doing the numbers and I'm like, I don't think they're making any money. And then very lucky for me, my wife is actually an accountant and bookkeeper. So I'm speaking with her and like, got her to sign the NDA and all that. And then she looked at it and she goes, no, they're not making any money. I'm like, why is this business worth $100,000 if it's not making any money? Like, where's the assets? Like, what is this? And I took it back to the broker, and this is exactly one of the things. Is like, if you're a good broker, surely you would identify this and like flag it early. Like, you wouldn't list a business that isn't making any money for $100,000 unless there was like some reason.
Well, you just destroy your reputation, right? And that's what I want to talk about is like, you just, you're going to sell a bad business, you're going to get a bad rap, or you're going to sell what this person's trying to sell is nothing really. And you're going to get a bad reputation and you're going to be broker than you were as a broker.
Totally. Wow. I went back to him, asked these questions from here, and like his answers were, well, this is what the owner wants for it. Like, this is kind of how it works is, this is what they are. I've put it up for sale and it's my way of negotiating the deal. And I'm like, right. And like, that was the big switch on this broker's got no clue. And then the second part of that is I asked him to go back to the owner of the business and explain why. And basically, the owner of the business expressed how much blood, sweat, and tears and systems they'd put into this business, and that's how they'd come to the valuation. And like right out of the gate, I'm like, no chance I'm buying this. But I got talking to the broker because I wanted to understand more of what's going on, because like I'd already been in business a few years at this point, so it's not like I was a novice. Like I had a successful marketing agency at this point. Like I knew a thing or two. I wasn't completely naive. And like it was fascinating what I heard from this broker. And he was like, well, 60% of the businesses that we list don't sell. And I was like, fascinating. And then I said, of the ones that do sell, like how often do they get the price that they're listed for? And he says like very rarely.
That's just insane. Like, and a good question I think to ask, Charlie, is like, how long has that business been on the market for? Because I was going to touch on it later, but let me touch on it now, is that there's two people who are key players in selling a business, and that's the seller and the broker. And I just want everybody to know that neither of those people know, or I wouldn't say know the value, but determine the value of the business. So neither of those two people do. And that's really important for everybody to understand. And most people are listening right now and going, "What? Hang on a second. What do you mean by that, Jared?" Of course they value the business, right? They're the ones who determine the value of the business, how much it sells for. And that's not true. The only thing that determines the value of the business is the market, is the person who buys it. So for people that are either looking on website brokers or marketplaces, they can say my business is valued at this, or it's this valuable, or it's worth this amount of money, but it's only worth the amount of money somebody is prepared to pay for it.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. And it's like, certainly in the spaces we play in internet valuations and stuff, it's even more fragile because it's very, very hard to often compare online businesses to businesses a couple of years ago, where in physical businesses or property, it's like, a house that sold 2 years ago has probably not changed that much. So you can get, I think, a more realistic expectation.
Yeah, it's very similar to property. And the crazy thing that I look at, Charlie, is this broker or the brokerage firm is like 60% of the businesses they list don't sell. It means like 60%, they're doing 60% work, and that's equating to nothing. And they're not getting paid. And it's just like, well, hang on, wouldn't you, if you're the broker, wouldn't you take a step back and be like, well, I'm not going to list these types of listings because I know they don't sell and it's a waste of my time. It's just that mentality of a broker is like, they're just trying to make it work because they don't know what like obviously they probably don't know what businesses to list or not.
Well, the story gets better. The broker was like surprisingly helpful with the information here. But like I was like horrified at this point and thought much the same of you, is like, well, they're just trying to play a volume game, super volume game. Like they don't care, essentially.
Yeah.
But it's like, if it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like that's how they're approaching business. I believe there probably is some better brokers out there. I won't throw them all into the same category, but it was a very eye-opening experience. The next thing is I asked him like, do all businesses like effectively like make it to market? And he pretty much said to me, he's like, well, look, I've got a few clients and this is hypothetical. And he goes like, I've got guys in the financial space. And if anyone comes in with like a financial planning business doing at a minimum of like, I think he's at $1 million with a couple of staff, he'll just buy it. So it never even gets listed. Like he's already got buyers lined up in categories. And I quickly realized, I'm like, right, so what's hitting the market is basically the crud from this guy. Like this isn't the stuff you really want.
That's just insane.
Well, very, very interesting, because I think he was trying to word me up for the same type of relationship, in all honesty. I think this is how these guys actually did business, was like just basically hunting for people that could fill categories, have buyers lined up, and then when something came in, they could clear it quickly with really lucrative deals. So this was my first like insight into the broking world. And I realized that if I wanted to like buy and sell businesses or buy and sell websites or anything like that, the game isn't particularly won, in my opinion, from like, going through what they have listed. It's won through having relationships, so they come direct to you with good deals prior. So I think for someone that's been in this space long enough or wants to do a lot of this, like broker relationships can be super, super valuable. But again, I'd just be very, very looking at, with what's listed, you have to come to an understanding that maybe that's not all that is available.
Yeah, for sure. You don't just want to come into the market and maybe they've got like a 6 month or a year period or they've got nothing good listing. Like that's something for everybody to be very cautious of when a broker does ask. And I know this from different brokers that I've spoken to, and they come out and they want to know how much money I'm willing to spend. They want to know what sort of thing I'm looking for and determine that, and then put listings in front of me. So it's just like a sales sort of method. But you don't have to feel obliged to go for those businesses. Like it's really important if somebody goes, oh, this business is for you. You still like, it's still really, really, really important to know the due diligence as well. And if you guys are looking to learn more about due diligence, there's other episodes that will talk about different parts of that. But just because the broker says this is the business for you because you've told them what you want doesn't mean it's a good investment.
Totally. I think it was a good experience to have early, because I didn't go into buying online businesses or even doing deals now, I suppose, with negligence or naiveness. Like I was very aware that this is how the broking world works. And I'm sure there's a lot of reputable brokers out there, but certainly like I look at this right now and saying, website brokers can be fantastic. But my first thing I kind of look at is you still have to have a level of due diligence. A broker is working for the seller, not necessarily the buyer.
Yeah, for sure. So with that, Charlie, like what's your opinion on the marketplaces then? Like, and not just like the business marketplace like bricks and mortar, but I know that you have gone away and looked at different businesses on, different marketplaces like Flipper and Exchange Marketplace. Like what are like one or two things that you like about the marketplaces that the brokers don't have?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Personally, I'm a fan of marketplaces. I like marketplaces. I think the marketplaces are kind of like the high stakes poker table of the industry. It's like, ooh, you could do more damage, but you can find some good winners as well if you know what you're doing.
That's
So
a
it's like,
really good way to put it.
yeah, I've thought about this. I was like, I'm going to come in with some good, analogies for this episode.
A great way to put it. I like it. Love it.
Yeah, so it's like, pardon me, sorry, I'm carrying a little bit of sickness at the moment, but I kind of think of it as that, in the marketplace, the potential of finding a diamond in the rough is far greater than you would find through a broker, in my opinion. You definitely have to know what you're doing. I kind of think that if you're starting out, a broker is probably a better place to start out. But if you gain experience or you're very, very skilled in a particular type of business, then marketplaces can be fantastic. They really, really can. And I quite like, and I'm even happy to name and endorse, I quite like Flippa. I think Flippa's fantastic. I think for what they do an excellent job.
Yeah, I totally have to agree. And that's a massive reason for wanting to jump on and do this podcast is that I previously have said to a lot of people, like, don't buy from Flippa. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that everybody that comes and finds my stuff is they go away and be like, oh my God, they get their aha moment of like, yeah, cool. Like, I don't need to start my own online business. What a massive epiphany. Like, I could just go buy one that's past that 90% failure rate, which is great. And I'm glad everybody gets that. Although when you understand that, you just, like, if you're anything like me, everybody just jumps straight onto the bandwagon and jumps on Flippa and goes, yeah, cool, I'm going to buy this business, or, they do whatever it is and look at all these marketplaces because it's so much easier to find, a mass amount of businesses without a whole lot of, work and loops you need to jump through when you have to deal with brokers. And the reason I have been telling people to not go and buy from Flippa previously is because that's what they do, and they go away and they don't know how to do good research and due diligence when they find these businesses from Flippa, and it can be disastrous, and it's not good for them or for Flippa at all. And I spoke to the CEO of Flippa a while ago about this, and he's putting in so many, or Flippa as a team, they're putting in so many different preventions to prevent that from happening when people do go straight to Flippa. So certainly, like, I love Flippa, and I do love Exchange Marketplace, and these different marketplaces are really, really good, and they serve a great place in the market for people wanting to buy businesses. Although for everybody that is listening, I want you to understand it's so key and so important before you buy from any of these marketplaces is to ensure you're really good at doing research and due diligence into these businesses. And previously I'd be like, no, just scrap these marketplaces, but they're putting some great things in place for people to get better research and due diligence. And then I was just saying, normally just go straight to brokers for people that are first time buyers, is go to brokers. And I still think that's a good method, but I'm not dubbing that these different marketplaces aren't any good, because they are great.
It's interesting. It's really interesting. Another one that stands out is the Shopify marketplace as well. I've seen some really great sites on there, sold through there. Like, if you have a Shopify site, you can sell on their marketplace, which I think is really cool. But you kind of mentioned something, and I hinted on this before, is like, if I, was a beginner, I tend to think a broker makes sense. I think that's the smart play. Do you agree with that?
Wholeheartedly. It's what a big message of mine has been. And even though I say Flippa's really good, and so is that place that you were saying, the Shopify place where you can buy and sell websites from, that's exchangemarketplace.com for everybody listening. I think these places are really, really good. Although for a first timer, like, it's undoubtedly the best way to go to a broker, because it's a far safer investment for a first timer, because when a broker is selling a business, they, like I said before, Charlie, in this instance where you try to buy a yoga business, is these brokers have their reputation at stake. And if you find a good broker, they're not going to want to ruin that reputation. And there are some really good brokers out there. And I've talked to many good brokers and have clients bought from brokers and all that sort of stuff as well. So it's certainly the first stop shop when you go to buy your first business. And then when you've really learned more about the process and the due diligence that is needed to be done to ensure you're buying good investments, then you can start moving back to Flippa and these more open marketplaces where it's kind of like the wild, wild west, which is getting tightened up a little bit anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree, they are improving it. Pardon again. The next thing I wanted to ask you, Jared, and I'm curious your opinion on that. If you were selling a site, so let's say you bought a site, you've spent a couple of years on it, made some improvements, it's a solid business, and for whatever reason you've decided now's the exit, would you list on a marketplace or would you go through a broker?
Well, I'm in a pretty good position where I kind of just can sell it privately. But besides that, let's just say I wasn't. Um, that's a great question. And I think I would probably go down the route of selling it. Well, it depends on the price of the business as well, I guess. If it's anything under the $100,000 range, I'd probably sell it via a marketplace. If it was anything over that, I would sell it via a broker. Just because I'd want to get rid of it a lot quicker, and it can take a lot longer to get rid of a more expensive. I wouldn't say expensive because expensive is different to everybody, but a business over $100,000, it'd be a lot harder to move that on Flippa, in my opinion, rather than on a broker.
No, but I think that makes a lot of sense, and I tend to agree. Is like if you're the number I see out, if you're trying to sell a website for over 250 grand, it's a longer, more detailed process. It just is. The amount of people playing in that space is just smaller than the other end. If you're trying to sell a website for under 50 grand, it's a very higher volume game. So it's like it is much quicker.
Yeah, that's right. And that's because when people first get to this industry, they're like, oh, I just want to test out the waters, and they want to buy something in between the 20 to 50K range. And that means there's a way bigger market, like you said.
All right. So if we move on to the next side of things, what do you think the big advantage is from a website broker? Like if you're going to go through a broker to buy or sell, what's the big advantage it has over a marketplace?
Awesome question. And let's do it for a purchaser, somebody who's buying a business first. The biggest advantage is that when you do use a broker, it's so much easier to gather information for research and due diligence. And they normally have everything for you just lined up, and you can just say, can you give me all of this? And they can just give it to you. And it's just a quicker and more simpler process because they want to give you, like that's their job, is to give you as much help to make sure you can do your research and your due diligence to come to a decision to purchase the business. And that's the biggest advantage of buying through a broker. And they do a little bit of like due diligence for you. Like, well, not kind of, they just gather data really. But the biggest advantage for a seller would be, you know, from Captain Obvious over here would be, I'd say you don't have to do so much work in selling it. You can kind of give it to the broker and they can say, this, I need this and this and this, and then we can sell it with that. And they do all the talking to people that are looking to buy the business, because that's a lot of work in itself. And I've done some different content and videos and stuff like that on, you know, how much work goes into actually selling a business.
I think people are often shocked by that. If you've ever gone through it, it's like, this is why brokers get paid well. Yeah. There's certainly some things that come with it. But that's very fascinating. Like, I think the big thing for me when, you know, feeding back into that is I really like the idea of having validated financials or validated traffic. Like, that is very appealing to me, to someone that's actually like checked everything's authentic. I think that holds some value.
Yeah, from a broker. And what would you say your favorite thing is about going through a marketplace?
Just like the high stakes poker table, I think it's got to be the rush.
It is. No emotion in that investing at all, right?
No, it depends how you see yourself. So it's like, you know, if you're an amateur poker player, like the high stakes table is dangerous, very dangerous. But if you see yourself as a pro and potentially know what you're looking at, then it can be very, very lucrative. So like that's how I tend to feel between marketplaces. I often see it, and like I've got to try and be careful how I say this, but like some people often don't realize what they're sitting on. There can be people selling a site and it can be massively undervalued because their awareness is just not there in what they have or how it could be used.
And I think you've said this before, where people have gone to sell businesses on different places like Marketplace because they didn't even know brokers existed. And just for people that are selling businesses that aren't conscious of that, you know, it's such an advantage to somebody like ourselves, Charlie, to come across these marketplaces and scour them and find those diamonds in the rough and go, okay, wow, this is something that is, you know, you can just get a stellar deal. Like the multiple you can get when you find one of these things is amazing. And it does take a little bit of work. Like obviously there's a fair bit of work to find those, but is the juice worth the squeeze? When you find the right one, certainly, right?
My experience tells me yes. I could sit here and say yes, and I've seen enough people around me that would support that claim as well. So it's not like I'm an isolated case. I know a number of people that have bought sites off Flipper or a whole bunch of them and like had massive amounts of success.
Yeah. And so for yourself, Charlie, like say you were going to offload some of your businesses and you didn't have like a PDN, which is what we call a private deal network. Like we know a lot of people who are investors and want to buy businesses. Say you didn't have that, but you have the businesses you have now, or you're growing some businesses. Where do you how would you go about selling them?
That is a really good question. I want to kind of offer something a bit interesting at the moment. One of the things I'm considering, and this is just like purely off the cuff, right? And I know we're meant to be talking about brokers and marketplaces, but open mic night. One of the ideas I've been floating around with at the moment is the idea that I could hold a much bigger portfolio if I was willing to offload a portion of some of my sites. So if I could find people that wanted to own sites in the space I'm in, or the places I'm in, and I could offload 50% of a business and have them run it, that would actually be a smart exit for me. So work with me on this. I know this is going to get complicated. Let's say it's no secret I'm in the baby space. I love the baby space. Hello to all the babies out there. If I've got a baby site that's worth $100,000, if I could sell that half of it for $50,000 and bring someone in who wanted to be an operator and collect from that side, that's kind of something I'm toying with, is like, can I have the best of both worlds? Can I unleash some capital but then still maintain some sort of cash flow on a great asset I've built? Like, is that possible?
You want the answer?
Sure.
It's 100% yes. I've got a client that has done that exactly, bought a partial of a business. And you know what is actually really attractive to a purchaser is being able to buy a business. And this is for a first timer wanting to get in this space, is it's actually pretty exciting to be able to buy a business and own a portion of it and then learn from somebody who has built it. And then, you know, they put the time and energy, you know, you get some fresh legs, some fresh energy in there with the right strategies from the business mind who's built it. It's a huge win-win for both parties.
This is what I'm thinking. I'm glad you've said this, and I'm thrilled someone else has done it. But I kind of was thinking about it as like, you know, if I was going to sell someone half of one of my baby sites, it's kind of like we're going to play bowling, right? And they're going to be the bowler, but I'm going to be the guardrails. I'm just going to be there, keep them in the lane, make sure the pins go down, but like still let them play the game.
Yeah, exactly. And they can bring their own flair and how they roll the ball down the aisle. And it's a really exciting thing. And I think that's something that we could, maybe I'll have to chat to Blake and some of these other brokers and marketplaces to see, you know, if that, because if my clients want to go away and do that, let's work out how we can make that into a different sort of, element that they can bring to these marketplaces. So that's pretty exciting, coming up with ideas on the podcast, Charlie. I'm loving it.
It came to me at one point. But anyway, to answer your question more directly now, I tend to think that, like, I'm a really big fan of, like, there's two that I really like, and I'm happy to say this is I like Flipper and I like Empire Flippers, which, thank you for having similar names. Makes it so much easier. But it's like I tend to think I would gravitate towards those two, being that that's where I like to shop from. So it's like, you know, we kind of like to sell where we shop.
Yeah, I'd certainly be the same. I'd be selling through Empire Flippers, or or Flipper, depending on those ones. I also really do like FE International. They're a good, solid broker as well. And I've spoken to many other brokers, right? There's like heaps out there. Like I've already spoken to Latonas, and they sell some pretty good sites, and there's lots out there. But the Empire Flippers one is certainly, they've just got a massive place in the market. They've just done a lot of really big branding, and they're listed on the stock exchange in America. Did you know that, Charlie?
I did not, but I'm happy to. Maybe I will invest in them.
500 in company. I'm pretty sure that means they're listed.
I'm not sure if that means they're listed.
Don't take it from me. They may not be listed on the stock exchange, but I know they're a 500 in company, and they do crush it. They bring a lot of deals to the market. I mean, they normally bring like seven new deals almost every single week to the market, in between, that 30 or 25, 20 to 20 grand to like, up into the millions, which is pretty exciting.
Well, I've been watching them like a hawk, and they definitely do add some value there.
Massive value. And the cool thing that these guys do is they, as brokers, is when they list the listings that are, up into from the 50 to the 100K range, sometimes a little bit lower, is they do a seller interview, and it goes through like 20 to 40 minutes, and they list it on YouTube, and then people can just go away and listen to that. So they just record the conversation they have and then make it public for people to listen to, which is really cool because it just makes their job so much easier. And people can also listen to what the seller has to say. And I think it's a smart tool to use for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I really like what they've done there. Great work overall. I just think they're a fantastic business. Big fan.
Big fan. And speaking about Flipper as well is, if you guys haven't listened to that episode with Blake from the CEO of Flipper, is they're making some pretty awesome changes as well, which I'm really pumped and really excited for. And I've seen Exchange Marketplace, like I've had clients buy from Exchange Marketplace and just gotten amazing deals, So I'm not opposed to either. Like the main message that I have is that to be very cautious when you do first come to this whole buying websites for passive income thing as a newbie, is to not rush off and buy something from one of these marketplaces without actually knowing how to do good, proper research and due diligence. And for those that are my clients, I say like, look, you can look at these sites for sure, because they're getting taught correctly from people that have bought so many different businesses from these places.
I think you nailed something so important is like, both of these places are good. Like they are, like website brokers or marketplaces. They both have their place and you can definitely succeed on both. But it's kind of insanity to use either of them if you don't have a method. So an understanding of like how to buy a business, what you're looking for, a filter, due diligence, all that, and then support. So if you do find a deal, having people to run it by, people to talk about it with, people that can give you an understanding or experience of the niche. Like that's the stuff I think that is just as important, in my opinion. Like when I go into a space, if I've got a friend or someone I know that's had experience in the niche, understands and can validate my thinking in saying, yep, no, all your research makes sense, and I've gone through a good method of actually evaluating the business, like that's the stuff that really increases your chances on these places.
I wholeheartedly agree. Like I've got a story where I went and a lot of you guys have heard this story where I reached out to support from my father in one of the businesses that I was looking at buying, and my dad's like, no, we can't make sense of the financials. And I knew that, and I went away and was prepared to weigh up the options of what was going to happen. And I went and bought the business. It was a really good investment. On the other hand, I bought another business where I was like, I don't really know what to do here. And I had reached out to support from people that had gone away and, bought businesses before. And having somebody experienced on your side is really good. And even for you, Charlie, you went away and looking to buy a yoga business, you got your partner on board to have a look at the business that's not making any money. And yeah, the process is really important. Like you said, so one thing that I want people to understand is that, know what your goals are, know what you want to achieve, know what type of business you want to buy, why you want to buy that sort of business, and then have set a certain process on how to do your research and due diligence. And that's what I formulated for myself before I went and bought a business, because you just don't want to come unstuck.
I couldn't agree more. And do you know what's interesting? The more I do of this, right? So the more deals I do, I find the more support I need and I want. I didn't appreciate it as much in the beginning. I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit more humble now, or my ego is dissolved, where it's like I'm happy to be wrong and happy for other people to point out how I can succeed. But it's like the more I do of this stuff, the more support I want around me and more clever people I want around me helping me with it.
This is the biggest gift that I've spoken to somebody about this week, is that, what would you tell yourself, 5 years ago, with what you know now? And one of the biggest things is like, I would put my hand up for help, like with everything I need. Like, you get that ego out of the way and realize there's no such thing as a self-made millionaire, because everybody who has achieved any level of success is because they've listened to a podcast, read a book, watched a movie, gotten some sort of advice from a mum or a dad or a coach or whatever. There's no such thing as self-made. It doesn't even exist, in my opinion. And it's just putting up your hand for help with everything is like, nobody achieves anything without support, without help, right?
Totally.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because it's like the most powerful thing for anybody. Even if you don't want to buy a business, if you just want to be successful in anything, it's just so damn powerful. So, Charlie, we covered so much. We're not, in particular, like only stay to a marketplace and this one only, and then only stay to this website broker, or, and reasons why. But they're there for a certain type of person at a certain position or certain place in their journey, in where they're heading to go away and buy an online business. And I just want to say, Charlie, thank you so much for jumping on board today, even when I know you're a little bit under the weather. But I want to ask you, where can people go away and find more about you?
Thanks, Jared. And, it'll be interesting listening to this podcast. Will I be like, oh, too sick, shouldn't have done this? Was I just talking in circles? No, I mean, it's surely we got this. But anything you want to find out about me is on charlievalher.com. So CharlieValher.com. So all my projects and what I'm getting up to is on there.
Well, funny thing is that I had a little cough, I think twice through the whole thing, and I tried to put my mic on mute, and it, for some reason, didn't actually work, because I'm not feeling 100% either. So thank you so much, Charlie. Really do appreciate it. You can go away and find out where Charlie is from those links there. And thanks so much for everybody listening. Please be sure to like and subscribe. And if you did like this podcast, please go away and leave a review and let me know like what you liked about it. I love the feedback. Thanks, guys.